and welcome to Babies with Knives. This is Crash Course Corner, where we teach you the basics of how to play a game system. Today we are looking at Star Trek Adventures. I'm Alice Peng, aka Lala Twiddle on the boards.
And I'm Brandon Powers. Star Trek Adventures is a space exploration game by Modiphius Entertainment, where players take on the roles of Starfleet officers from the mid-22nd century all the way to the mid-24th century.
If you don't know the timeline, that covers the Enterprise show all the way up to the Dominion Wars and Voyager being lost in the Delta Quadrant.
Adventures isn't the first Star Trek RPG published, but it does seem to be the most successful, and Modiphius Entertainment has avoided the curse of the Star Trek IP on RPGs.
A special thanks to Modiphius Entertainment for sending BWK a starter bundle with reference sheets when they heard we wanted to cover their Star Trek Adventures game. Star Trek Adventures uses 3 different dice: the D20, the D6, and the challenge die. Most actions are resolved using the pool of D20s that determine the success or failure of a task. Game masters choose the appropriate attribute and discipline for the task. Adding these 2 values together gets the task's target number, the number to roll on or below on a D20 for one success.
Each task will require a number of successes between 0 and 5, with the default being 1. These required successes are known as the difficulty. On opposed rolls, the difficulty is the successes generated by the opposition. Characters start with 2 d20s that they can roll on a task, and can purchase additional d20s to increase chance and degree of success. Each d20 that rolls the target number or below is a success, and rolls of 1 count as 2 successes. Results of 20 create complications.
An important note about adventures. Before rolling, characters should know the possible result of their actions. Characters are considered experienced and intelligent, recognizing the likely outcomes of their actions.
In addition to the all-powerful Lord of the Dice D20, Adventures uses occasional D6s to randomize results on charts, and challenge dice.
Challenge dice are used to determine how much of something when that should be determined randomly, like how much damage was done or how much cover did the character benefit from.
Challenge dice are D6, but have only 4 possible results: 0, 1, 2, or effect. Effect rolls on challenge dice count as 1 success and provide additional effects. If you don't have special challenge dice from Quark's Emporium, you can use standard D6s, where 3 and 4 are blank, 5 and 6 are effect, and 1 and 2 work as written.
Adventures uses traits to denote important aspects about situations, locations, people, and equipment. Traits are short for descriptions of important facts in the scene, like subspace disturbance, crowded promenade, or packed warehouse. Traits can impact actions positively, negatively, or not at all. When a trait affects a task, it increases or decreases the difficulty by 1.
Positive and negative effects of traits can even allow actions that would not normally be possible without the trait, like having a subspace relay to the Alpha Quadrant when normally that communication would be impossible. Traits that are extremely potent can be listed with a number following the description to denote the level of effect it is having. So the Mutara Nebula might have sensor interference 2, allowing it to modify sensor checks twice.
Traits that are positive are advantages, while negative traits are considered complications. Complications can come from effects within the environment, like difficulties to get subspace signals through atmosphere, or they can be created when players roll a complication, like an errant phaser strike igniting flammable materials to create a fire in the middle of a tense scene.
Every task in Adventures has a complication range. This sets the number that if a character rolls it or higher, will introduce some sort of complication to the scene. Most often the complication range is 1, which means that only a 20 will create a complication. However, the complication range can go as high as 5, which would mean that complications would be created when a roll of 16 or higher is rolled.
These introduced complications can be spectacular, like the fire in a tense scene, or more character-driven, like someone losing confidence in their abilities, or anything that the game master finds appropriate.
When complications might be inappropriate or a player wants to avoid the complication, they can instead increase the threat pool by 2 to ignore the complication. But beware, that threat pool can come back to bite you later on.
Momentum is one of the player currencies in Adventures. Each success beyond the difficulty of a task generates 1 momentum. Momentum can be spent immediately after the successful roll to gain better result, or it can be saved to be used later on.
Momentum can be used to create advantages, add additional d20s for a task before rolling, increase the difficulty of an opponent's task, or gain information from a task. Other uses of momentum might be specific to a given task. Momentum does not last forever, and 1 momentum is removed from the pool at the end of each scene.
Threat is the Game Master currency in Adventures. The Game Master starts with 2 threat per player and gains and spends threat throughout the session.
The Game Master gains threat when complications are ignored, circumstances in a scene are dangerous, or oppositional NPCs generate momentum. In addition, players can give the Game Master threat to purchase extra dice for their tasks.
Threat can be spent by the Game Master the same way that players can spend momentum, preventing complications to NPCs, creating complications for players, adding reinforcements, and triggering environmental problems. Star Trek breaks game time up into scenes and encounters. Scenes are the bulk of the time that handle things that lasting minutes to hours up to a few days of space travel. Encounters are far more focused on action of characters involved, often pitting different sides against each other like combat. Encounters are broken up into rounds during which each character takes a turn.
At the start of an encounter, the Game Master determines who takes the first turn. When they have completed their action, one of the characters on the opposing side gets to act. Action passes back and forth between the sides until every character has taken 1 action. Then a new round starts.
Rather than tracking everything in precise distances, Adventures instead uses environment and zones. An environment is a reasonably large area where action is taking place, like crowded marketplace, the field of battle, an asteroid field, or the tight confines of a starship.
The environment is broken down into zones. These are smaller areas where the characters occupy and take actions. For example, during the fight in the market, one character might find themselves sheltering behind tables in the Klingon restaurant, while others might find themselves exposed to the ambush in the street itself.
Zones are not any specific size. Sometimes they might be large areas when fighting in the wilderness, and other times they might be fairly small spaces like individual crew quarters. Zones are used to determine range and movement, so the larger a zone is, the easier it is to move through or shoot through. Adventures uses 5 different range categories to try and establish how close things are during a fight. Reach is when things are close enough to be touched, while close is within the same zone. Medium, long, and extreme ranges are at a distance of 1, 2, and 3 or more zones respectively.
During their turn, a character can move anywhere within medium range as a minor action. To move 2 or more zones away is instead a task.
Characters on their turn can take minor actions and tasks.
Minor actions are relatively quick things that a character can do, and one can be performed during a character's turn at no cost. Each minor action can only be performed once, and minor actions after the first cost 1 momentum each to accomplish.
Common minor actions are aim, draw an item, drop prone, interact with something, move, standing up from prone, and preparing certain things.
While minor actions are quick to perform, a task takes up the bulk of a character's round. Characters can perform 1 task per round, but through the use of determination, momentum, or when following certain leaders, they can perform 2 tasks during a turn.
Tasks allow characters to help each other, sprint across fields of battle, direct troops, tend to the injured, and more, like attacking your enemies. No matter how many times you claim, "We come in peace," sooner or later, there will be a time to set phasers to kill, and instruct those under your command to shoot to kill, men! Here is how you keep your crew coming back to their ship when things go wrong.
When attacking, characters pick whether they are trying to kill or subdue with their attack. Lethal attacks add a single point to the threat pool. Striking an opponent in melee is opposed daring and security rolls with a difficulty of 1. If the attacker wins, they hit their target. Ranged attacks are instead control and security against a difficulty of 2.
Ranged attacks can get a bit difficult when either attacker or target are within reach of a creature's. Enemies within reach of the attacker increase the difficulty by 1, while any creature within reach of the target increase the complication range by 1.
If the attacker is successful, then a hit has been struck against the target.
Once a character's been hit, it's important to know if they have been damaged by the attack or not.
Each attack has a damage rating determined by totaling the attacker's security with the weapon's damage rating. Take the challenge dice equal to the attack's damage rating and roll them. The defender might have some resistance based on cover or other circumstances, so they roll challenge dice for those. Subtract the resistance from the damage and apply the remainder to the target's stress.
If an attack does 5 or more damage or reduces someone to 0 stress or below, they suffer an injury. If both of these triggers occur, characters suffer multiple injuries. Injuries incapacitate the character, prohibiting them from taking minor actions or performing tasks. 2 lethal injuries will kill a character, possibly disintegrating them.
Luckily for the players, characters can avoid injuries by spending 2 momentum, adding 2 threat, or suffering a complication. This avoidance can only be done once per scene, per character.
One last note about adventures. Characters are assumed to have their basic equipment, but when they need to acquire specialized equipment, those might have opportunities or escalation costs.
Opportunity costs are paid for in momentum and signify how advantages that the crew has earned up to that point in the mission can quickly ebb away as time is spent assembling the desired gear for a mission. Opportunity costs are generally only used when the situation can become worse by taking extra time preparing.
Escalation is used when gathering weaponry or other things that would be aggressive and increase the danger in the mission. The costs of these items go directly into the threat pool.
Items can have both opportunity and escalation costs.
With that crash course, you should have all the tools that you need to sit down and start playing Star Trek Adventures. If you are interested in making a character, please tune in over the next 2 weeks for our upcoming Babies with Knives character delve, as well as our sample character creation. And in a few weeks, keep an eye out for Star Trek Adventures actual play.
If you enjoyed our Adventures System crash course, please click subscribe below to get updates about our future videos. And if you have any questions or comments, you can find us on Facebook and Discord, links to both provided below. Thank you for joining Babies with Knives, and come back next time to get honed.